Coming up on This Week in Radio Tech, computer technologist, broadcast engineer, voiceover artist, serial entrepreneur, and wacky radio guy, Jack Scott, the most interesting engineer in the world, is coming up next on TWiRT. This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you by Broadcasters General Store, with outstanding service, savings, and support. Online at bgs.cc. By Broadcast Bionics, with the Bionic Studio, including talk show control, social media, and visual radio. Broadcast Bionics brings exceptional audience engagement to radio and TV. By Angry Audio. Audio problems disappear when you get angry at angryaudio.com. By Nautel, worry-free transmission you can count on with outstanding control, reliability, efficiencies, and Nautel's unmatched 24/7 customer support. Online at nautel.com. And by Max Connect Wireless, prioritized high-speed internet service designed for transmitter sites and remote broadcasts. Hey, welcome into This Week in Radio Tech, the show where we talk about everything from the microphone to that light bulb at the top of the tower. Hey, I'm Kirk Harnack here in the Nashville studios, the Telos Alliance studios in Nashville, Tennessee. It is a typical cold, sputtering, nasty, cloudy, gray winter day here in Nashville. Maybe it's nicer where you are, but we're going to have a good show for you today because our guest is freaking amazing. I'm so glad to make this guy's acquaintance over the last couple of days, and we'll turn you on to him in just a minute. Right now, another amazing guy, and that is my co-host, my ever loyal, ever faithful turner of the screws and exciter of electrons. It's Chris Tarr. Hey, Chris.
Oh, please.
What?
Oh, ever faithful. What do you want? Need money? You didn't pay me back for the last time I loaned you the money, so I don't know why you're buttering me up now. Yeah, actually, I just got back. I had a fun little project. I put a translator on in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. It's a fill-in translator. In this part of the world, as a fill-in translator, you can go as high as you want. You can't exceed 250 watts, but you can go as high as you want as long as it doesn't exceed the contour of the primary station. So I put up a 250 watt translator with an antenna at 750 feet.
Oh,
so on a TV tower. And just put it on the air on Monday, and it was stopping on scan 25 miles away.
and how are the contours calculated? By standard FCC calculation method?
Yeah.
Or Longley Rice or something like that?
No, it's the standard FCC curves and the contours. So it's a fill-in translator. Now we reserve the right, obviously, to put an HD on there later, but it's a fill-in for a class. Is it a C3? So I mean, it's got a huge contour to begin with, and then the translator is just a fill-in contour for that. But it was interesting because in Wisconsin, trying to get tower work done any time of the winter is always a challenge. So this was the third week in a row that I drove up there in hoping to get this done. And we finally had a couple of good days there and got it done. But it's interesting because this is it's a Gates Air transmitter that I'm using, and it's got the audio processor built in, and it's got their Interplex card built into it. So you literally put the transmitter in, connect the power, connect the antenna, 2 network cables, and you're on the air. No processing, no audio encoding, it's all directly through the network. So all the audio streams, I've got fiber there, audio streams from the studio, and all there is in a rack is a single box.
With these transmitters getting more and more things built into them, the next thing they need is like a Wise camera built into the front of the transmitter. And so, and of course you could read the meters. You don't need a camera at the transmitter to read the meters. So it's looking the other way. It sees you walking in the building and punching buttons like this.
That's right.
On the front
and it's got SNMP too. So for remote control, it's all over the wire too. So, literally, I just popped a box in, plugged it into my firewall, and I was done. That was it.
Well, I hope you get pictures and video because we're going to need a whole story sometime. Hey, let's bring our guest. Our guest is Jack Scott. Jack, welcome in. Jack happens to be in the same state as I am, although Tennessee is so long that he's, a 7-hour drive away. But here he is. Hey, Jack, welcome in. Good to see you.
Well, good to be here, I'll tell you. Thanks for inviting me, and it's always a pleasure to talk to professionals.
Well, you're going to be
And
sorely
when they arrive, we'll
wanting
let
on
you
this
know.
show.
And that's right. That's what I was waiting for that comeback. So yeah.
Well, Chris had the best one. Oh my goodness, Jack Scott, you are like a serial entrepreneur, but you do have a history as a broadcast engineer. And we're going to hear about you. Tell you what, we're going to have to take a quick break, but why don't you give us a little elevator taste of what we're going to be finding out from Jack Scott today?
Well, broadcast career spanning now 58 years. Started in 1966 when at the age of 12.
Oh,
And it only gets worse from there.
Oh my gosh. Yes, he peaked early at 12 years old, ladies and gentlemen. Jack Scott. No, reason I asked Jack on is because he's humble, but in a proud sort of way. I really like this guy's attitude. And he does have this broadcast engineering history, but as a broadcast engineer, and we'll get into this, he decided to branch out into other businesses. And to me, that's a very curious, interesting, and laudable thing. And I think there are plenty of broadcast engineers who get good at their craft. And, they kind of have a desire to do something else. And hey, I know broadcast engineers who have owned coin-op laundries and have gone into the restaurant business, for example. And I'm just curious to find out from Jack about his motivation for getting into other businesses, but always keeping a foot back in broadcast as a consultant, as a voiceover artist. You can tell by his voice. He's got to share his voice that way, and other things in broadcast. So we're going to get into that and hear about Jack and his thoughts and how they apply to us as broadcast engineers these days, and what we may want to do with our spare time, or what we ought to make of our careers if we want to branch out and do something else. So we're going to hear from Jack Scott. Our show, This Week in Radio Tech, is brought to you in part by Nautel. And Nautel, hey, they're starting up their Transmission Talk Tuesdays again in February. The first one is going to be on Valentine's Day. So I'm sure they'll remind you to take care of your sweetie. But Jeff Welton will be here on Valentine's Day, February the 14th. You can go sign up right now. And that's the sign up page. That's what it looks like right there on the screen. On February 14th, they're going to talk about Smith charts, something called MER. And I'm going to see if I can get Chris or Jack to explain that to me. And more about engineering with Stephen Lockwood of Hatfield and Dawson Consulting Engineers. So Smith charts, MER, and more. Stephen Lockwood. Stephen's a great guy. He's just come back from overseas where he's done a bunch of broadcast engineering work, and he's just all over the place. Has more frequent flyer miles than you'd want to shake a stick at. So sign up at nautel.com/webinars. Nautel.com/webinars and click on Transmission Talk Tuesday. It's not actually a webinar. I know it's under the webinar heading, but the Transmission Talk Tuesday is a roundtable discussion where the Jeff Welton hosts, talks to his guests, but also you get to participate. Unlike this show where I barely let Chris in here. Check it out from nautel.com/webinars. All right. We're here. MER. Who wants to answer that one? What is MER? Does anybody know?
I'm going to punt that one to you, Chris.
And I'm going to punt it back to you there, Kirk.
I think
it sounds familiar. I just don't know from what.
Yeah, I'm
mean error rate or something?
As to what that is.
Maybe we'll have to hear it from Stephen Lockwood.
Seems like it'd be like mean error rate or something like that.
That does seem likely. Yeah. Does that have anything to do with Smith charts, though?
I don't know.
Or would it be talked about in the same? We'll have to tune in and find out on February 14th.
Yeah.
You glued to the television for that one.
Oh, yeah. Well, let's jump right into Jack's story, because it starts out as a few people in our industry have started out, and that's at a tender early age where he just wanted to be on the radio. Jack, 1966. It's September 7th. What happened?
Well, I had prior to that, I'd met this guy that worked at a local radio station as a disc jockey. He was, and I just thought he was famous. I mean, to a 12-year-old kid, that's a big deal. You turn on your radio every morning, and there's Bill Midkiff, and I thought that was spectacular. And I had a driving urge to be famous, for lack of better words. So I got my third class radio telephone license and went down to the radio station. My aunt was doing traffic there, and quite honestly, I thought, that was kind of a lonely stretch of road, and I had no idea why they needed anybody doing traffic down there. But nonetheless, I walked in and I applied for a job, and they took me seriously, which meant that the next day I was there doing cleaning toilets. And I think about an hour into that gig, I realized this was either going to be the shortest career in the history of broadcasting, or it was going to be something else. So I summoned up my courage, which I had plenty of back in those days, walked into Art Simmons' office, who's the general manager, and said, Mr. Simmons, I have been here nearly an hour and I am not yet famous, and that is not making me happy. And that's an absolutely true story. It happened just exactly that way. And when he got up off the floor and stopped laughing, he took me down the hallway to the production studio, turned on the microphone of the Maggie, and then at that point gave me some UPI copy and said, "Practice. I'll be back." And when he came back about an hour or so later, we listened to some footage, and he said, "I think you'll do." And he started me the following Sunday on air, and that was September 7th, 1966, as you said. From there, I just became absolutely enamored with it. I remember going to school, and we were studying current events and that sort of thing. And of course, I did really well because I was reading the news every hour at the top of the hour. But I found myself watching television to learn how to pronounce places like Phnom Penh and things like that, so that I could get it right. And when Art left the station, as general managers tend to do, we got a guy by the name of Bill Powell. He came in, and he decided he was going to make use of my age or lack thereof. And so the next thing you know, I'm doing every remote. I'm doing just everything that you can imagine. By 14, I was holding down middays, doing middays, and I was doing it 6 days a week. They let me out of school every day at 1 o'clock so I could do the show.
Wow.
Just yeah, and it would never have happened except for some people in radio, number one, who were forward thinking enough to be able to say, let's take a chance on this kid. And without my parents and their tacit approval and vigorous and active participation in that whole adventure, my mother used to bring me dinner every night, hot dinner, a plate kind of thing, because I was working, the afternoon gig. So, yeah, I mean, I just really got lucky, and I loved radio, and I still, I'm 69 years old now, and I have a passion for radio that just doesn't end. So that's kind of how I got into this whole thing,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it just radio makes me happy. It just does.
So what? I'm sure Chris had a similar experience, or one along parallel lines as I did, and Jack, surely you did. When did you start wanting to turn screws and replace
Mm.
burned resistors and figure out what was wrong with things so
I
that they worked
think
better?
about
How'd that
I
happen?
think about 15. To be quite honest, uh, my aunt, her television broke, and I said, "Well, I'll take a look at it." So I opened up to the back of the television, and I had absolutely zero experience fixing televisions or any other thing for that matter. But when I looked at the back of that thing, for some reason, it just made sense to me. My mind mapped it out. I understood it, and I have no idea why. But I was able to fix it, and that sort of piqued my interest. And then I had a guy by the name of Dave Downing. We talked about David the other day.
Mhm.
Now, this is a guy who was the chief engineer at the radio station I was working at. He's also the morning news guy, and he's also the EMS lead EMS guy for the emergency squad. And he's legally blind. Imagine that.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's got his nose in this transmitter, and he's getting a suntan from the tubes, and and I just picked his brain, and things electronic just made sense to me then, just like they do now. I open up a box of something, and I it just makes sense.
Mhm.
So I decided I was going to. And back in those days, uh, if you had a first class license, why your future was guaranteed, because every station had to have an FCC first on staff. So I
Mhm.
71, I guess it was. I went and I went to Boston, took my the second class uh, test, and then followed right by the first class test. Passed that test, got my first, and then promptly in 1972 they deregulated radio, and now you know how that story ended. FC first class licenses went away. They became general class licenses, and now I understand they don't even issue those anymore. So
Mm.
it's kind of insane. But that really was the whole deal. It was honestly because I could. As silly as that may sound, I had zero training, zero formal education. Um, Later went to school, became a bachelor, got my bachelor's in electrical engineering. But um, it just turned me on. It turned me on like turning the microphone on. And I thought, man, I can do this, and I'm going to do it. And so I did. And that may sound, uh, I maybe conceited a little bit. I just could. That's the simple answer. I just could. And you can
That
see
is
behind me, there's
fascinating.
boxes of cables
Yeah.
and stuff on the back there. I mean, I've got, I'm still turning screws. So there you go.
It's fascinating. I thinking back to my own experience. I kind of felt I would open the back of a TV and yep, black and white Sears Silvertone quit working.
Mhm.
Oh, I opened the back up, totally unqualified to do so. Knew not to touch anything. I thought, well, that must be the audio section because the speaker connects in there. And
Mm.
and that must be the part that really makes the electrons fly because there's a wicked looking red cable that goes to the back of the tube or the side of the tube. That must be really bad right there. It's red, and that must be the tuner. That's the thing that goes click 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 when you turn the front of it. You know, and the antennas, the antenna leads go into that kind of area. So, Chris, how about you? When did you kind of knew that you had the knack to look at these things and go, yeah, I think I kind of get that.
I believe it was when the FCC paid my house a visit when I was 11 to check out the transmitter that I built to get on the radio. True story.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
I wanted to be on the radio so bad that the engineering part was an afterthought. I got a book and I learned how to build this stuff, and I built it, and I got a visit from the FCC. They said, well, we're going to have to take this away. But he said to my mom, this kid might have a bright future in engineering if he keeps it up. And,
There you go.
I think like the rest of you, I kind of started just being fascinated with it. Garbage day, I'd be always out picking up as a kid, broken TVs and clocks and everything else and fixing them. And just like you, I was self-taught. I never really went to school for any of this. I have this innate way to just kind of look at things and figure out how they work. So it's helped me a lot during my career where I could I run into a transmitter I've never seen before. Well, I can usually just kind of look at it and figure it all out and go, okay, that's going to be the issue, or just that kind of. I just have this real logic about troubleshooting that really has helped me out a lot over the years. But yeah, that's my first kind of taste of that was getting a visit from the FCC.
There you go. I'll tell you a cute story. You mentioned audio sections. For about a year, I lived on an island out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And this was 1976, I guess it was. And there was no cable or any of those sorts of things. So somebody had built a television station and a radio station, and then they were broadcasting on that. And I naturally was drawn to that. At one point, I wound up being the chief engineer for that operation, and the audio section in the TV transmitter went down, just completely. And getting parts was not a simple thing. I mean, you didn't go down to the store and buy one. You had to call somebody in Hawaii and order it, and then it had to be flown in. So, and of course, meanwhile, everybody's getting excited because they can't watch their favorite shows. So I had a spare FM transmitter, and I lit that mother up, and I routed the audio to the FM transmitter and tuned it up, And I told everybody, put your radio on top of the TV and turn them both on. And we did that for like 2.5 weeks.
That's pretty smart.
You got to do what you got to do sometimes.
I had not heard of that. Well, hey, this is Jack Scott along with Kirk Harnack and Chris Tarr, and we're on episode 629 of This Week in Radio Tech. We're talking about Jack, and I said he's the most interesting broadcast engineer, and you're going to find out why. Stay tuned through the broadcast here, through the podcast, because you're going to find out some of the other interesting things that Jack has done and done very well, and in fact gotten himself into a business that, I don't know. We didn't talk about money, but it looks like he's doing okay. And I love the way that he talks to his customers about his current business focus. All right. Enough said about that. We're going to come up and find out how in the world Jack got into building radio and TV stations, actually building stations in good sized markets. That'll be coming up. We're going to hear from our friends right now from Broadcast Bionics. We'll be right back.
Welcome to the Bionic Studio. The Bionic Studio brings all audience interaction to the fingertips of a production team in radio, TV, and podcast. Our workflow-led system is working 24/7 around the world for small broadcasters and national and international networks. Our telephony module, Bionic Talk Show, allows cost-effective centralization, remote operation, scalability, and resilience across an entire network of stations, but at the same time is used in single-studio self-op environments. Social media curation and activity is now considered a broadcast critical part of programming. Bionic Social means the studio isn't overwhelmed with a wall of interaction from an ever-growing number of social platforms. We combine SMS, MMS, and email together with a speech-to-text service for listeners using smart speakers. We enable studio teams to curate, filter, and display all platforms in one place, and post text, images, and video content to multiple platforms in one operation. Effortless collection of video content with Bionic Director has helped position some of the world's most successful stations as leaders in viral content, generating appointments to listen and free marketing via retweets and shares. Bionic Contest enables end-to-end tracking of on-air competitions, live reads, and prizes. These can be on-air contests, automated SMS entry, or online. Anywhere, and Skype TX for Radio brings high-quality audio and video contribution into the studio with ease. No need for dedicated PCs to run different applications. Everything is controlled within the Bionic Studio UI, and incoming connections are visible to users along with all other platforms. Our codec integration enables connection, algorithm configuration, and directory to a wide range of IP and ISDN codecs. The Bionic Studio, a unique suite of products designed to enable your talent to work smarter.
The Bionic Studio, simply amazing ways to make your broadcasting better. Whether you're doing, you can be doing podcasting, take live callers, get information up on the screen quickly. The idea behind Bionics is that you pretty much keep doing what you're doing. They just present you with lots more information at callers, video callers. You can do that too. And also make social media clips so easily with the Bionic Studio. Check them out at bionics.co.uk. Hey, thanks a lot for them sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. By the way, we're going to hear from Dan McQuillan sometime. As soon as we can get him away from his laboratory, we're going to get him back on the show and talk about some of the containerized virtual things that Bionic's been working on. All right, our guest is Jack Scott. Jack is a broadcast engineer par excellence and doing a lot of other things too. The most interesting broadcast engineer in the world, I would say.
Yes.
All right.
You talk to my wife.
Oh, well, you're a pilot, right? What kind of planes have you flown?
Well, I started out in I was 14. I started out on a PA 140. I like to do everything early and get it out of the way, you know. But later flew C-141. And so I was an Air Force pilot for about 4 years. Got shot down right at the tail end of Vietnam, and had some fun there. That was quite exciting, but a whole different broadcast. and I've transitioned into helicopters. Pretty much, if it's got wings or rotors, I can handle it. So
Wow.
it's another one of those passion things, I think it dovetails very nicely with the broadcast thing, because it's about equipment, and I mean, you don't fly a 141 without your instruments. You know what I'm saying? It's all
Mhm.
important, and the electronics and I later really got into engines and that sort of thing too. We were talking about my bus career for a little bit.
Mhm.
Just was fascinated by mechanical things, just all of that stuff. Just fascinated the dickens out of me.
A
So,
number of broadcast
go ahead. I'm sorry.
engineers are pilots. So transitioning from a Piper, a PA 140, to a C 141.
Well,
So the C
there's
141
a
obviously. Mhm.
Yeah, there's a couple of steps in there. Obviously, the Air Force begins training you on piston engines, and then you transition
Yeah.
into the trainers, and which were really fun. And I really wanted to be a fighter pilot. To be quite honest with you, my eyesight just wouldn't let me do it.
Mm.
But
Mm.
nonetheless, yeah, there. I mean, there was some steps in there that I didn't really get into, but just
I don't know if
flying in general is just a hoot.
I don't know if you want to say anything about it, but I found it fascinating. Toward the end of the Vietnam War, you were held against your will.
Yeah. Well, we were um, April 29th, 75. You remember the pictures of the helicopters sitting on top of the embassy? Well, that
Sure.
was plan B. Plan A was me and some of my comrades. We were going to fly into the airport and evacuate people in
Mhm.
the cargo aircraft. We took a mortar round on approach right behind my co-pilot's head and sucked him right out of the aircraft. We I put it on the ground, bent it up pretty badly, and the airport had been overrun, and we were taken prisoner right there. I mean, we got out of the airplane, and there they were. So yeah, I spent about 4 months before they managed to get me relocated.
Wow. Wow. Well, I take it you built some radio and TV facilities. What
Yeah,
after your Vietnam experience?
Yeah, built WMJK in Kissimmee, Florida, and helped convert KGMB from the black and white to color. Um, uh, Rebuilt a station that burned down, went right to the ground, and so we had to completely rebuild that. We actually borrowed a trailer from the local paper company, and a competing radio station loaned us a spare transmitter, and we put it back on the air. But yeah, even doing some engineering as late as last year out in Nevada. So um, yeah, I've managed to get around a little bit.
Uh, Interesting that there's a number of intervening years throughout the 90s and 2000s that you got into some other businesses. But I want to stay on broadcast engineering for a second.
Okay.
Even though you weren't full time into broadcast engineering, you say that you return. You've done a few projects. Technology's got to be changing kind of behind your back. What's it
And
like to come back into
I
engineering with some different technology?
Well, I'll be honest with you. The technology doesn't sneak up on me too
Mm.
often. I'm always looking for the next big thing, the next new thing, and I read uh, vociferously. I mean, I get crazy about it. Great veracity, I guess, is what I wanted to say. And so I'm always, try to stay up on stuff. There's some things that I've let go in the last year or so that I just felt like I didn't need to pay attention to anymore. But even the computer technology, all those things, it's what really spawned the second business, and then helped me grow into other things. So, um, yes, have been a lot of changes. I When I first started in radio, we didn't have cart machines.
Right. Oh.
And I'll tell you, we did everything with reel to reel. We didn't have such things as reverb kits and stuff like that, or actually there was some stuff like that out there, but the station I was at was too darn poor to do it. We took two Maggies, put them side by side, and put a 7.5 reel on the outtake reel, and put the another 7.5 on the intake reel of the second Maggie, and we created about a 5-second delay there. So there was just all kinds of things that you just had to do to be. If you weren't creative, you weren't going to survive back in those days. I mean, it just was tough sledding. I flew the C-141A, and we had no GPS. I mean, we had Loran C. That's it.
Hmm. Mhm.
I mean, yeah, I mean, the stuff today, I mean, it's so much easier in some respects, but it's also so much harder because it's so much more complex. And the complexity of it is what really turns me on.
Well, you mentioned computers. So in the early 90s, you saw computers as a way to be creative, make a living, and do something productive. Tell us about that.
Well, I started a computer business. I had, quite honestly, I had maybe $500 in my pocket. I started running full page double truck ads in the local paper. I created a 24-hour, 7-day a week operation. Hired 37 people. I walked into what used to be Sun TV and now is Best Buy, and I found the 6 or 7 salespeople that understood computers, and I told them all I'd give them a 20% raise if they left with me and went out the door, and they did, including the assistant general manager. So we created this computer store on steroids. You could come in and you could custom order your computer, tell us how you wanted it built, and then we'd build it for you, deliver it to your house, set it up, and then we had classes at night where you could come and take classes to learn how to use the software and the hardware. We
Mhm.
just did it all, and we had radio dispatched vehicles for service. And my business plan called for the first year to do 300,000. That was what we figured we'd do, and we wound up doing 1,700,000 the first year, which created a whole litany of other business issues. When you're financed for 300,000 and you do 1,700,000, you need new financing, and dramatic growth requires dramatic financing, and a lot of people don't get that. But
Mm.
the net of all of that is it became a cash cow that really allowed me to grow and prosper. Um, Somewhere in the early 2000s, we transitioned from computers to security systems, very, very high end security systems. We built for NASA, we built for the Secret Service, we built for every branch of the military. We had a huge $250 million contract with the Air Force. It was pretty insane and pretty intense. But that business allowed me to make considerable amount of money. And of course, I had every wealth guy in the world calling me, wanting me to invest money in this and that and the other thing. And I said, no, I'm going to invest it in me. And so I started buying local businesses where I could create local jobs or keep local jobs in some cases. And we had a garage with 4 bays. We had a body shop with 3 bays and a paint booth. We had a tunnel car wash. We had the number one fine dining restaurant. We had a roadside restaurant. We had a tanning salon. We had I think I said plumbing heating, but if not, I did now. We had the list goes on and on and on. A video store. And I promptly took the video store and sold all the videos to a competitor and got out of the video business because I saw what was coming. I just didn't think that was going to be something that would survive in the long haul, and obviously it didn't. So as, as we did those sorts of things, it allowed me to focus more on business as opposed to the technology, which was kind of cool because I became pretty good at business. And I think a lot of people, particularly talented engineering people who are really into the glue of what makes things tick, don't have the time or the resources to to learn how to do business, because business is a real technology all by itself.
Mm.
So yeah,
Mhm.
those things all allowed me to live a pretty comfortable life, and I've been very, very happy with that. And now I retired about 4 years ago, and now instead of just ending everything, meaning just getting out and flying around and doing stuff, we've created some new businesses we can talk about if you want to. So, yeah, I would say serial entrepreneur is probably a good way to say it.
I want to, before we take our next commercial break, I want to ask Chris about this and get your thought, Jack, if you want to pipe in. That years ago, when I was doing full time contract engineering, I had an employee, and one day, and he had only been with me about 3 months, and he said, "Hey, Kirk, when are we going to get some training on the equipment that we work on?" And I said, well, I said, this isn't like a copier business where we sell, Canon copiers and there are 17 models and they share a lot of parts and a few they don't. And you learn, you take a course on each one or a series. It's not like that. We work on so many different things. We try to discourage us having to work on toilets, but occasionally we do. And we work on everything from, tower lights to spark gap, arc gap, this, that, and coils and capacitors and tubes and solid state and audio and RF and digital. And we work on so many different things that I can't train you on a particular piece of gear. You're welcome to take manuals home and read them, bring them back. And so it's not like a business where you kind of have blinders on and learn one thing. But Jerry, this will prepare you for doing almost anything in electronics and systems, from component level up to systems level, to be able to install, specify, troubleshoot, and do all that kind of stuff. And I feel like being a broadcast engineer and really doing it gives you an incredibly well-rounded look into a lot of different electronics technologies and physical properties. That's my speech. Chris, might you feel the same or have a different take on that?
No, I think you're right. It's excuse me. It's all about theory. What we do is based on theory. What we do it on, the physical devices all, are laid out differently or built differently, but at the end of the day, they all do the same things. So, when I'm training younger engineers, it's more about the theory and the building blocks, because once you understand that, you can look at anything related. And that's why I think with engineers, they're pretty handy guys to have around, or women, in that, given enough time, there's not a whole lot of things we can't fix, because how we deal with things is we look at the blocks, and because we run into so many different things over time, we learn how to troubleshoot by using theory as the background. So when I try to fix a car or something, I go, well, okay, in theory, the way the car works is this and this and this. We're getting this far and no farther, so it's got to be in here. So to kind of break it all down, we really have to boil it down to the essence of what is it doing, what isn't it doing, and what should it be doing, and taking the steps from there. So my teaching is more about troubleshooting in theory than anything else. I'm not going to sit down and show you how to repair a CCA, but if you've repaired a CCA, those same building blocks are in a BE or a Harris or whatever, and you can take those and apply them there. They're just wired a little bit differently, but as long as you know the broad strokes, you can solve it. It's not a problem you can't fix.
I agree wholeheartedly. I've always told people who I've dealt with over the years, don't think that you're going to become a specialist. What you want to become is a generalist. You want to know, it's better to know a little bit about a lot of things than it is to know a lot about a few things. I'll give you a weird example of that holding out. One of my finance customers last year was a car wash, and the car wash went down. She had no idea what to do. They were going to charge her $10,000 to send a guy out to fix it. And I happened to be in her office that day, and I said, I'll take a look at it. So I went over. It took me about a day, got the thing back up and running. I think I charged her $1,000 or something like that. And all I did was read the freaking manual, you know? It's just you've got to read a lot. Number one, if you're not a good reader, you need to be a good reader, and number two, you need to understand what Chris said, theory, and be able to apply that from one device or one genre to another.
Good advice, and we've got more of it coming up. It's This Week in Radio Tech, episode 629. Jack Scott, broadcast engineer and serial entrepreneur, is our guest. Chris Tarr is along, and we've got a word from some great people who design and they're good entrepreneurs themselves, and that is Innovonics and their FM and HD mod monitors, available through Broadcaster General Store. Let's take a look.
Hi, this is Gary Lerman. I'm Sales and Marketing Manager from Innovonics. I'm joined here by our President and CEO, Ben Barber, and we're here to tell you about two new products that we're very excited about. They're HD modulation monitors, the model 551 and 552, and Ben's going to take us through some of the features. Ben, what can you tell us about these?
The 551 has the big display, 7-inch touchscreen display. You can look at different parameters instantly by walking up to it and touching it, getting information that you need. It also has the LED displays for FM total modulation, left, right, FM, HD 1, 2, 3, and 4. The other thing that the 551 has is that it has full-time audio outputs on Studio Hub connectors on the back, both analog as well as AES digital. So you've got FM, HD 1 through 4, they're full-time. The 552 doesn't have the display, doesn't have the metering, and doesn't have the full-time audio outputs, but the web interfaces are identical for remote viewing and monitoring.
Great, thanks very much, Ben. These products are going to be available in January 2022. Contact us at innovonicsbroadcast.com for more information. Thanks very much.
And as you can tell, that was a year ago, and they are available, and they're available through Broadcaster General Store, including the whole line of Innovonics equipment. Famous FM mod monitors like the 531, they're up to the N series now. The Sophia HD Radio site streamer, the Omni line, just all kinds of good stuff that make your life so much better, do the monitoring for you, and even the Aaron FM rebroadcast receiver, which is just a great thing to have for your translators. You can get all this from Broadcaster's General Store. I was just talking to Jessica Shute today from BGS, and my goodness, those people operate so efficiently. They're able to really sharpen that pencil before they give you a quote. And their custom systems for tracking the availability of your equipment and the order once it's processed and on its way to you, they really have a great ability to let you know when it's going to arrive and give you a very good price for it. So check them out at Broadcaster's General Store. The website is bgs.cc, or you can call them. That's what I prefer to do, at 352-622-7700. That's 352-622-7700 for Broadcaster's General Store. Thanks so much, BGS, for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. Okie dokie, we're here with Jack Scott. Chris Tarr is along, and we're talking to Jack, the most interesting engineer in the world, because he's done so much. I don't know if he's sponsored a beer brand yet, but he's done about everything else.
Yeah.
Nobody's asked you yet? So let's see. We're going to move in. Oh, yeah. You mentioned, and I'm so glad for you that capitalism creates an income. We hope it does for the guy who starts the thing, guy, gal, whomever, and creates jobs for more people. I mean, my little radio stations, I guess we've got almost 20 employees throughout the stations, and they wouldn't have jobs with us if we didn't have the radio station. So you've created some businesses. You mentioned restaurants, car wash, that kind of thing. And of course, the computer sales service company and the security company. By the way, on that security company, you mentioned that this was pretty high tech and high security stuff. Can you let us in about how that area of security is different than home security or maybe standard building security? What was special about what you guys were designing for government agencies?
We'll use NASA as a classic case in point. They had purchased equipment from, I guess, 5 or 6 other vendors, and they had given them a set of specifications that they wanted. And it wasn't about the money at that point in the game. It was about getting those specs. They needed to hit those numbers. And they had sent back every piece of equipment they had purchased before they called me. And they called me and they went through, I think I spent about an hour and a half on the phone with them, with their lead engineer, and he walked me through exactly what he wanted. And I had answers for him. And he said to me, "You're the first person I've talked to that actually seems to understand what it is I'm talking about." And I sort of paused for a second, and I was kind of taken aback because I never thought I was that smart of a guy, to be honest with you. They're dealing with some rather large companies that have a lot of money to throw around for engineering talent, but they had dumbed the equipment down to get a cost, to get it to a certain cost point. And I told the guy, I said, "Do I have some free reign to do this and come back to you with a number that will fit the bill?" And he said, "Yeah." So I sat down and I designed a system. I went into Goddard Space Center, actually, that particular piece of equipment. And it was in the very, very early days of IP cameras, and they were starting to move video over IP. And no one, you probably could talk to 15 people in the industry and nobody, you might find two of them that understood what IP was. And I got it. And so I built the equipment, quoted them a price quoted them a price, then built the equipment, which is the smarter way to do it. But nonetheless, we sent it down there along with the tech to install it. And they put it up, and within a week, he's calling me to tell me how we've not only met the numbers, but we've exceeded the numbers, and they're just thrilled and happy. And can I have another, please? And yes, it was a little more money than they had spent before, but I don't think it was the money that was the problem. It was the trying to package something into a price point. And a lot of companies do that. We just never did. It was the price is the price. If you want it to work right, then we'll build it for you and it will do what I told you it'll do. But it's not going to be the cheapest date in town. And I find that, and which leads me to a point which I think custom equipment is where I've always wanted to be. I always wanted to be in the custom niche as opposed to off the rack type of stuff where one size fits all. And we just built good stuff, and I had great tech support people. I had a guy that was with me for 30 some years as my lead tech, and he had the patience of Job. I would have gotten on a plane and flown down to beat somebody before, by the time he's on his third hour of trying to tell him how to do something. But nonetheless, I think it was all of those factors. We just never took the approach that we were going to do it halfway. When we got the Air Force contract, they wanted stuff within 6 months, and I said, I can't do that. And they said, well, when can you do it? I said, you've got to give me a year. And they said, well, why is it going to take you a year to do this? And I said, because it's not about building the equipment and getting it to you. What am I going to do when you call and need help with it? I don't have the staff to support that. I've got to find people. I've got to train them on this equipment. I've got to get desks and chairs and computers and all of this other stuff. And it's going to take me some time. And I would rather pass on the opportunity than to have you call us and find out that we can't handle your need. So, give me a year or I'm going to have to pass on this. They gave me the year and we built a system in Aviano. I don't know if you know what a hush house is, but if not, I'll explain it to you. But we built systems in Aviano, Italy. We built Nellis Air Force Base. We built one in England. All over the world, we were building these hush houses. And it was really a lot of fun.
This translates, I think, into engineering in a very good way, in that, a lot of us are guilty of, or contract engineers are guilty of trying to hit a price point. And they tell the station owners or whatever, I can do it for this amount of money. Look, you're going to save all this money and but the thing is it's something you wouldn't be proud of. I had to go back. I worked with a station. They had somebody built them a translator. And, they're like, look at how much money I saved. He built it on the cheap. But then, a month later, he's complaining that the thing doesn't work. He's like, it sounds horrible. The coverage isn't very good. And so I stepped in and I said, listen, this is going to cost you some money. If you want to do it right, this is what we're going to have to spend. And if you're not willing to spend it, I don't want to be involved, because I don't want to build something that's going to, you're going to badmouth me a year from now saying that I built a piece of junk. So, we're going to spend some money here, but I assure you that the results are going to be great and you're going to be very happy with them. And sure enough, he was. And I think so many times, as especially contract engineers, but engineers in general, we want to be the hero with saving the money. And when you can do that, that's great. But, we're the ones who have to support it down the road. So, when I go to my coworker who owns the radio station and they say, yeah, there's a cheaper way we can do this, but I don't want you yelling at me in a year because it's broken.
Yeah.
We need to spend a little bit more money this time and do it well.
I've always found that no is the single most powerful word in the English language. When you tell somebody no, their first reaction is, why? And you've just hit the nail on the head. I'm not going to do something that I'm not proud of. I'm not going to do something that I'm going to get, labeled as a bad guy over, and I'm certainly not going to promise NASA something that I can't deliver. I don't know, what are they going to do? Put it on the space shuttle, and it doesn't come back because I screwed up. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm not willing to take that chance. And I found oftentimes I would get calls where people wanted a certain thing, and I would tell them no, and I lost some deals. I'm sure I did, but by the same token, it never bothered me to walk away from a deal, even a big one. You have to be true to yourself, and you have to be true to your product and your service. And if you don't believe in you and you don't believe in your product and service, how are you ever going to convince somebody else that they should? So. That's my 30 seconds of how to say no.
What good advice. Awesome advice. Jack, I do see you as a bit of a fellow who understands the technologies as we've talked about earlier in the show, because you had a broad range of experience. But then when you find a niche, sure, there's other companies that said they could deliver these security systems, but you actually could. It may have cost a bit more and taken more time, but there had to be be in Jack Scott that Jack was going to deliver this.
They were really in the upfront part. They're buying me. I'm the CEO. I'm the owner of the company, and I am the lead engineer and the lead designer, which seems like a lot of hats to wear, and it was, but. Nonetheless, I mean, they're listening to what I'm telling them. They're believing what I tell them, and they're willing to take a chance on me. And that's part knowing your stuff, but it's also part being a good salesman, but being an honest salesman, just laying it out on the line. That yes, this can be done. Yes, this is what it's going to cost, and yes, that's probably more money than you expected to pay, but I can deliver that product. And if you want it, write me a check. So there you go.
So a lot of you in the audience, and certainly me, I'm wondering, what is Jack doing now? Where has he taken his talents? And we've going to have that for you, but first we're going to make a couple of shekels and tell you about some things that we believe in ourselves. And in fact, to do part of that, Chris Tarr is here to talk about our mutual friends who are at Angry Audio, a guy who loves broadcasting. So Chris, what do you got for us?
We're going to talk about the Chameleon again, and they've got some updates coming up that are pretty exciting. As you know, I'm a big believer in the Angry Audio Chameleon C-level, C4 and C3 processors. Corny Gold putting his ear to this stuff really makes a ton of difference, and Corny and I have talked several times about this. I've installed, I bought 25. I'm about halfway through with my installations, and they all sound fantastic. And I'm hearing from other people who've done the same thing. and have gotten the same results. It'll make a new processor sound even better, and it will really breathe life into older processors using this AGC ahead of the old processor that you're using. They've got the headphone processor, which gives you on-air like audio quality in the headphones. Because remember, with HD and all these other things now with delayed audio, a lot of announcers are just listening to the program feed in their headphones, and it can be a little bit weird. If those who've been on the air know what I'm talking about. You get used to hearing yourself through the audio processing over the air. All of a sudden, that's gone, and it kind of throws you off your game. The C3 headphone processor fixes that by giving you nicely processed audio in your headphones. Then there's the C4, which is a live stream processor. And what that's great for is if you're doing streaming. I know Shane Tovin uses it at his church for streaming his church services. It really acts as a really nice leveling agent, leveling device that keeps the audio level. It keeps the EQ active, gives you a great sound quality, and just a really nice device to have right at the end of your audio feed as it feeds the streaming device. Then there's the C level. This is the replacement for the Ariane and the Compeller and those things that aren't made anymore. And the C level is just a fantastic product. It's a multi-band AGC. It's got some secret sauce in there, thanks to Corny, and it just sounds fantastic. I put them in front of all of my audio processors, and it gives it a real natural open sound. And Corny kind of described it as he made it sound analog without the noise. So you don't have all the noise floor or anything, but it gives you that warm analog sound. And there's a brand new product coming out. I haven't seen it on the website yet. They have a software version of the Chameleon coming out, which is not only a processor through software, but also as a VST plugin. So if you're doing production or anything like that, you can use the Chameleon plugin to sweeten your audio. All that stuff, just fantastic. You can stop by Angry Audio's website at angryaudio.com for more information. Also, I know I use my friends over at BGS to order this stuff. Check them out. They have a great Facebook page too. In fact, I think they just recently did a giveaway of the new Chameleon software processing. So be sure to check that out. Whenever you have an audio problem that needs to be solved, get Angry Audio. They're just some great, fantastic products there. Check them out, angryaudio.com.
Thanks so much to Angry Audio for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. Our show is also brought to you by Josh Bone at Max Connect. That company is growing and growing and growing. And one of the big reasons is this amazing product, the Max Connect wireless Max Connect. And here's somebody to tell you about it right now.
I'm Gary Morrill, Midwest Regional Director of Engineering for Alpha Media. When I first spoke with Josh Bone about Max Connect, he told me they'd work great for remote transmitter sites where connectivity was a challenge. And he's absolutely right. We even have sites where we're using this as a backup to our STL using Max Connect's dual carrier option, and it works perfectly. We also have times where we need to be able to get out to a venue where it's kind of challenging because everybody and his brother is trying to stream video at the same time, like at a big sporting event. And you know what? Our data gets through every time because it's prioritized packet data. It works for us. It'll work for you. Max Connect. Check it out.
And it works for us too. Sometimes we have to do the show. I'm on the road. We don't have good Wi-Fi from the hotel or whatever. In fact, a couple episodes back with Frank Foti as our guest, I was at a seaside resort in Florida, and the Max Connect was the best way to connect by far. It wasn't going to work any other way. So check it out. Max Connect. You can go to maxconnect.com. I know it's spelled funny. MAXXKONNECT. Maxconnect.com. And you can choose your carrier too, whichever one you think is going to be working best, or you can even choose two carriers. That's kind of cool as well. Thanks a lot, Josh Bone, for being such an innovative leader and putting this thing together. All right, we got a few remaining minutes with our guest, Jack Scott. Jack, I wonder if you can tell us about what you're doing now, something that's pronounced like Onyx and spelled like what? What is this business?
I'm the whole internet streaming of radio and now television really fascinated me as long ago as maybe 6 or 7 years when this was still a very, very new technology. So I always wanted to create something that would work in that genre. So we created a new product called Onyx. It's AHNYX, and it's onyx.com. and then there is an AHNYX.TV as well. We're about to launch the TV promotion or the TV thing. We originally started just streaming music for bands, that sort of thing. We were able to do 320K streaming, which is how music should be listened to, as opposed to the traditional 128K that most internet stations are streaming. So we started out with we started building Onyx. That is up and running, and we have customers using it now. And now we have developed 4K video streaming and restreaming platform where you can actually do 30 frames a second in 4K with 320K accompanying audio. And we've got some new product that we're putting together there. It'd be live television, as well as a TV station in a box, if you will, where you can upload your shows and stuff, and just stage them and have them play out. So that's one of the things that we're doing. It's kind of in keeping with my technology geekiness, if you will. And then the other thing this is really just kind of started as a lark. I'm a sales guy, so I kind of miss talking to customers. And the next thing you know, I had this opportunity to get into the credit card business. And I tell you, I wish I had found the credit card business, 40 years ago. It has been amazing in what we've been able to do there in a year's time. It literally doubled my income in a year's time doing that, and it has also led me to make a lot of friends. I also own another company called Scott Web. We do web graphics and web design, that sort of thing. So that has allowed me to meet some customers there, to just do what I do best, which is to be a generalist. We bring a lot to the table: business coaching, all those sorts of things. And I love the business coaching aspect of this whole gig better than probably anything else, because I actually get to sit with people who have started a business, and like most of us who start a business the first time, we've made every mistake in the book, and now we're trying to figure out how to backtrack and get on the right track. And I'm able to help those folks, and that's a very rewarding thing, because it means that we keep jobs in the marketplace. And I'm a big believer in being a job creater. So that's what we're doing now, and it's working fine, and I'm happy doing it. Just shy of 2 years ago, I was very fortunate to meet a young lady and marry her. Just a spectacular woman who's the light of my life. And we're just living large in Johnson City, Tennessee.
And to think it all started with "I'm not famous yet."
Yeah, I'm not famous yet. That's pretty much it.
Oh my goodness. Well,
Yeah.
Jack, I look forward to meeting you in person sometime when I get up through your area. If you get down through Nashville, or if you ever go up to Milwaukee and see where they make beer, you can go up there, see Chris.
Beer is good with me. I like beer.
Yeah,
Chris hates beer. I can tell.
yeah, right. I look like it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
beer and brats and cheese curds.
That's right.
That's right.
Man. That's right. All
Well,
good
Jack,
stuff. Thanks, guys, for having me on. It's been a pleasure, and I've enjoyed this hour of just chit chatting and telling my story.
It's been great, and your story's inspiring. And I think a lot of engineers, have dreams of doing something, in addition to or in parallel with what they're doing now. Some great business advice. I heard a speaker a few months ago came through Nashville. He actually gave away copies of his book, and it's basically, hey, if you want to do something else, the best way to do that is to keep your current job and use that as a springboard or as an enabler to do what, something else you may be interested in doing. And that's what he did. And that's what a lot of folks have done. And hey, for example, I appreciate my friends at Telos Alliance. I get a little bit of time on Thursdays to do this show and keep my full-time job. So I really appreciate that. They've made that a special thing for me. And Chris works with Magnum Media. What a great boss he's got. Isn't that right, Chris?
The best. He really is.
Yeah.
He lets me do all this, and I've got the freedom to kind of explore other things. So I'm having a lot of fun.
Good deal. All right. Hey, a big thanks to our producer for this show, and that is Suncast. Thanks very much, Suncast, for doing the show. I will get you the show information just right away this evening so that you can get that done in preparation for your big trip. And I think that's about it. Hey, next week we've got a retired engineer on it. That's a couple of them. A retired engineer who is one of the funniest guys. Inviting him to be on the show, I couldn't get a straight answer. I thought, oh man, the whole show's going to be this way. But you're going to love him coming up next week. We'll see you next week on This Week in Radio Tech. Bye-bye.